Hey there, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Intellectual Tea Party podcast. I've been away for a little bit. Life's been very busy for me. I'm not going to get into that. Been seeing a lot of movies. I'm going to talk about those a little bit later for a lightning round of reviews because I've seen a lot of them since the last time I did this podcast. I'll leave out a few, but I'll explain later, but I had a pretty ridiculous week last week as far as content consuming. We'll get into the news, starting off as per usual. I just want to start out by saying a couple of different things. This is another solo episode, and I just want to apologize to all my listeners out there. This is not my intent of the podcast to do these solo outings so often and movie reviews and stuff like that. Really, the general purpose of the podcast, my envisioning of it, is much more akin to the first two episodes of the podcast that I did, first being with one-on-one with Clay in the pilot episode, and then I had a roundtable discussion in the second episode about E3. And I'm going to be in the coming episodes, I'm going to go back more towards that light, so you're not just listening to me. The purpose is I want to shoot the shit about topics that I care about and maybe talk about important things that maybe not be talked about, typically speaking, or perhaps is just, I don't know, maybe look at different views of things. I also, a big part of the podcast is I want to promote other people and what they do and just kind of talk it out. So I've got a musician coming on the show in the near future. He's been recording a full-length album, sending me snippets and songs here and there of pre-masterings, and it sounds amazing. I can't wait to pimp that shit. Gonna have some film discussions with some of my buddies that are really smart on that category. And then I've also got a roundtable music discussion as well with a group of people coming down the pipeline. So those episodes should be coming very near. But there's been a lot of activity in the realm of Hollywood lately, both as far as I mentioned, how many films I've seen recently, and also just in the news. So we'll start off with the news first. The last podcast, I had a discussion about Movie Pass versus the AMC A-List Stubs Membership Club. And I discussed how I was contemplating canceling my Movie Pass subscription because of drama that keeps ensuing with the company, and they keep changing their policies. Well, that happened like 5 or 6 more times since this that last podcast. On the night of the premiere of Mission Impossible Fallout, the company ran out of money, and people couldn't purchase tickets that night, and they scrambled and they had to borrow $6 million just to keep their equity intact. And they instated a new rule where you can no longer see studio films in the first 2 or 3 weeks that they're out if they're major releases. Stuff with high volume, stuff like Mission Impossible or a Disney movie. Christopher Robin came out last week. You couldn't use it on that. Stuff of that nature. They, for like a day, raised the price from $10 a month to $15 a month. And then everybody was outraged by that. So then they changed the policy again to you could see 3 movies in a month. You only get to see 3 movies a month. I believe that's the case. Don't quote me on that because it literally changes on like a daily basis at this point. Anyway, I got tired of Movie Pass's shit, and also I've just been really digging the AMC Pass, so I nixed the Movie Pass. It is donezo. I am done with that program. It was a great program. I'm not here to talk shit. I mean, I've seen 40 movies since last October, and I've spent very little money on that, so kudos to Movie Pass and all that you gave me. I'm sorry I had to go out in a burst of flame like that. I don't envision the company staying the way that it's been for a while, especially in the volume of subscribers, so I do not believe that'll be sticking around. So long story short, Movie Pass is done in my life. Maybe I'll touch on the subject again another day. But for now, I'm just going to let the past die, Good old Last Jedi reference. I know a couple of people who are regular listeners really despise that movie. All right, let's get into some other news. There's some TV news this week. CW, they're going to have a new Greg Berlanti Arrowverse show, and now they're going to have one for Batwoman, who they're going to be introducing in the crossover event this year. And they cast the actress Ruby Rose in the role, who's best known for Orange is the New Black and John Wick 2, and I guess just as a gay icon. I guess she's bisexual. It's a point of discussion quite a bit, but they were looking for a lesbian to play this character, so I think it's a big hit for them. I mean, there's been a lot of people complaining about this casting on the internet, of course, but I mean, I don't think she's a particularly good actress, but I mean, it's a CW show for one, and not to knock those shows either. I mean, I was a fan of a lot of those shows. I don't really watch them anymore. They got a little bit over the top for me, but I recognize the appeal, and I just think that's a big get for a CW show. She's like a considerable star at this point. She's been in a lot of movies, she's a recognizable face, so I think they did a really good job getting that casting. They're going to get a lot of viewership just from that fact alone, so kudos to Greg Berlanti and the CW, because they got a good deal out of that. They're going to get a lot of viewers. We'll see about the content of the show, but at the very least, they got a decent sized star attached to a CW show, so that's kind of a big thing. In strange news, there was back in 2006, there was a song from a band called the Plain White T's called "Hey There Delilah," and I'm sure you're aware of its existence, and you've heard the tune. Now, the weird part is now the singer of that band and TV executive of some sort are adapting that song into a TV series. This is 2018, people. This is the world we live in, where now ridiculous radio hit songs are now being adapted into television shows. I just can't believe it. You just have to laugh at that. I mean, go for it, you know. I'm sure some people, I mean, brand recognition is the best way to get anything greenlit in this day and age, but like based off the song, man, that's so funny. I can't get over that. A couple of movie news. In cool news, Ben Schwartz has been cast as Sonic, or at least the voice of Sonic, in the upcoming live action adaptation of Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm a big fan of him. Jean-Ralphio, shout out. Parks and Rec. Yeah, he's really talented. He also voices on DuckTales. He's done. He was he's like the main voice of BB-8, strangely enough. So he's got a good resume as far as voice work, and I think he's a great choice for Sonic. So a little bit more looking forward to that movie. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I think at the very least they got the casting right on Sonic. And in really, really terrible news, the Oscars has announced that they're adding a new category this year for popular film. Best outstanding achievement in popular film. That's something else that you just have to laugh at, the ridiculousness. I mean, everybody bitching about it keeps bringing up the fact that, yes, the Oscars is all about money and that's all they care about. Of course, you know, it is a business, and that telecast brings in lots of money every year, and it's been disintegrating in viewership, and just because the show is just not that entertaining. I mean, I still watch it every year, but it's a headache. It's overly long. It's not very entertaining. They leave out a lot of categories that I think would be really cool, but now they're adding this popular film category, which is essentially a category for, like, they're saying they're doing it for Black Panther because they don't want, like, you know, they think that the liberal media will freak out if Black Panther isn't nominated for an Oscar, I guess, or whatever. I don't know. Which, I mean, I've talked about on the show before, the PC nation of outrages of just anybody getting pissed off about anything on the internet. Blah, 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 whatever. It's essentially going to be big blockbuster movies, like things that would be nominated on like the MTV Movie Awards, but like not at the Oscars per se. Something similar to this happened back when The Dark Knight wasn't nominated for Best Picture, and it went from 5 films to up to 10 every year, which is weird. It's like up to 10, but they can decipher how many they feel like, just to throw in a little bit more of a commercial film in the loop, I guess, to garner more viewership or whatever. Anyway, this is a ploy to get more viewership. I mean, they're not hiding that fact, but it's it just degrades the meaning of an Oscar, you know. So I mean, what I would have liked is I would have liked them to add like a comedy category or action, because those are literally the two hardest genres of film to make, and they get zero recognition. The Golden Globes has comedy, but their definitions of comedy are, whew, they're very funny. The Golden Globes have always been a joke, but I mean, the Oscars are now getting on their level. But yeah, I would really love to see recognition for comedy and action genre, or very specifically stunt work is, well, actually stunt work is, that is part of it. It's just not telecasted, I don't believe. I could be completely wrong about that. Like, I could be thinking of a completely different awards ceremony. It's not relevant. The point is, this is silly. Nobody's down for it, but it's happening anyway. And maybe it'll work out for them, but it's dumb. And it's really just taking a shit on everybody else who's won these awards before, because the game's changed, you know? It's a curved system. Was that it for my notes on the news? Yeah, alright, let's move on to some other stuff. So as I'd mentioned earlier, I'd seen a lot of movies lately, and the reason is because of that AMC A-List pass. I've been seeing an absurd amount of movies, and I was getting caught up on a lot of things, and there was just a bevy of films coming out that I really needed to see. So what I'm going to try and do here, getting back into movie review territory once again, I'm going to do a lightning round of I saw 5 films in 8 days. Last week, I guess a little bit of the week prior as well in there, but so I saw 5 movies, and I'm gonna do a lightning round of brief discussions on each one. I'm gonna try and keep them spoiler free. If I'm gonna say a minor spoiler, I'll warn you ahead of time, but generally speaking, I'll just talk about feelings and reactions and stuff and what I liked about them. But we'll do these in order of appearance, so in order of when I saw them. So I will start with the first 2. Actually, the first 3 movies on here were very interesting. They were not anything I was surprised by all the movies. We'll just say that. I'll get into it. We'll start with the first movie, which was Teen Titans Go to the Movies. Just backstory. I've despised the TV series Teen Titans Go ever since its inception, because I'm salty that Young Justice was canceled in order to make this particular series. Like, Cartoon Network just canned it and then used the budget to make Teen Titans Go instead. And it's like, if you haven't seen the show, it's like geared towards children. It's like a comedy starring the Teen Titans and like as very small like children characters. It's okay. I hated it when it came out. I've seen later episodes. They've gotten a lot better over the years. I'll say that. The movie itself really surprised me. I enjoyed the hell out of this movie. As a hardcore DC fan, it was a lot of fun. It was very reminiscent to the Lego Batman movie. I might have enjoyed it a little bit more than the Lego Batman movie. It's got great songs in it. It's a musical, by the way. Premise is that Robin has never had his own movie, and of course Batman's had a ton of movies. And they go to a new Batman movie premiere, and the previews show films for, minor spoilers here, they show previews for upcoming new DC films, and it's like, Batman's sidekick coming this summer, and it's like, Alfred the movie, and then it just like it gets more and more and more ridiculous, and then just Robin never gets a movie, so he's just so butthurt about it. And there's like a studio chief that's making all these movies for like every superhero in the DC universe except for Robin and the Teen Titans, and they just get disrespected. And it's really, really funny. I'm surprised at how much I enjoyed this movie. And there's some dark humor too. This is geared for small children, but there's a lot of adult humor in it that had me laughing the whole damn time. I'm serious. I'm going to get into some more minor spoilers here. I'm just going to give you one scene that's from like the beginning of the second act. It's not relevant at all to the plot of the film. It's just a joke. But it's like, there's a part in the scene, minor spoilers ahead. There's a part in the film where they come up with the idea, if none of the other heroes in the DC realm had existed, then the Teen Titans will be the only heroes around, and they'll get their own movie. And then, of course, and so they travel back in time to stop it from happening. And so they go back to Superman, Batman's origins, Aquaman, everybody, and they fuck up their origin. And a couple of them are really dark. One of them is like is sweet. They stop Thomas and Martha Wayne from going down the alleyway, stuff like that. But it's the way that but one of the ways that they dispatch them is my favorite one was Aquaman. He was like baby Aquaman in the water, and they threw like the plastic like 6-pack thing on him and made him drown in the water. Oh God, it was so hilarious. And then they immediately go to the future. Obviously everything's fucked up. They immediately go back and they reverse all the things that they just did to redo the origins. And Thomas and Martha Wayne are walking Bruce away from the movie theater, and the Teen Titans come, they just shove him down the down the alleyway to get shot, and they give her a pearl necklace too. They give Martha a pearl necklace. It's hilarious. I cannot believe that shit. But Will Arnett plays Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke, which is funny because he's Lego Batman. But it's a lot of fun, man. If you love DC Comics, I highly recommend you check out Teen Titans Go. Go to the movies. It's really fun, it's heartfelt, and it's hilarious. Like, I'm shocked. And they have a great two things. Stan Lee makes a cameo in a DC movie. He's in it, and he's got the funniest cameo he's ever done. I loved it. It's so funny. And there's a really cool, legitimately cool mid-credit scene teasing an upcoming DC Comics revival, if you will. I won't spoil it, but it's pretty fucking cool. So if you're a DC fan, check out Teen Titans Go to the movie. After that, the next day, I went to IMAX and saw Mission Impossible Fallout. I am a huge fan of the Mission Impossible movies. I think they're just so cool. As a amateur filmmaker and like just a fan of film, I really appreciate the Mission Impossible franchise for the technicality, the art, the craftsmanship that they put into those films as far as stunt work goes and camera work and action. It's just like Tom Cruise may be a nutcase in real life, but I mean, I really respect the dude as a actor and producer, and he really gives it his all, man. He puts himself in dangerous situations, and it works. They get those shots, and this movie was no different. Gorgeous. The IMAX scenes were jaw-dropping in this one. I saw Ghost Protocol, the fourth film in IMAX, and that was beautiful. Had me drooling. And this one, like the climax of the film, is all shot in IMAX, and it looks fucking incredible. Helicopter chase scene through mountains and hand-to-hand combat is fucking cool. Really dug it. The last film in the franchise, Rogue Nation, I wasn't super huge on. I thought it was okay, but Ghost Protocol is definitely my favorite of the franchise. But this one might be up there. It might either take the cake or it's a really close second, because this was highly entertaining. The action was incredible. My only complaint is it was a little overly long for my taste. We're talking about like 2.5 hours here, 2 hours 40 minutes. It was really long, but jaw-dropping action, man. It was really good. It was the first time in the series that the director came back to make another one, 2 in a row. It was Christopher McQuarrie. He made Rogue Nation, and he made I don't know if he made both, probably both. I know he made the first Jack Reacher movie. And he's a famous writer as well. But kudos to him, and Henry Cavill's mustache did look wonderful. Thank God that they did not shave that for Justice League, because it absolutely makes sense that they needed that mustache on there, because a fake mustache would not stay on that man's face for literally like any scene in that film. So if you get the chance, definitely see it in IMAX. It is worth the price of admission to see those IMAX scenes. Anytime pretty much a movie has scenes that were physically shot in IMAX, I always recommend, because even if the movie turns out to be somewhat of a turd, if there's like scenes that were physically shot in IMAX, they look really cool no matter what. So other than that, don't have a whole lot to say about it. It was a good movie. I enjoy it, and I'm sure the franchise will continue, because this one's been a huge hit, and Tom Cruise doesn't look like he's slowing down. But I mean, who would have thought that this franchise would still be going like over 20 years later? It's crazy. It's like some Hugh Jackman shit. So those were the first two films. The next entry in my extravaganza of watching films rapidly, I saw Three Identical Strangers, which is a documentary that came out a few weeks ago. It's fantastic. It was really good. I talked previously about the Won't You Be My Neighbor documentary, the Mr. Rogers documentary. Made me cry like a baby. That was a great film, and then this is a great doc too. I don't know if there's going to be any other main contenders this year as far as documentaries, because these two have been spectacular that came out in this past month. Blew me away. Three Identical Strangers is a story of these this man in back in the 70s is going to college for the first time, and people on campus on his first day kept calling him by somebody else's name and thinking he was somebody else. And it turns out that he had an identical twin that he'd never knew about, separated at birth. And so that was a huge news story in the 70s, and they posted on newspapers, on the news. The next day, a guy sees this exact same thing, and he's like, that's my face. And so it turns out that there was triplets that were separated at birth. And that's just the beginning of the story. This story is amazing. I mean, I can't believe I've seen snippets of this story before in the past and like TV shows and stuff, but like the extent of this story is incredible, and it spans decades. It's so fascinating. I can't even talk about the movie because there's a spoiler every 5 minutes of just like fantastical shit like that will blow your mind. So I can't justify talking about the content of the film because I feel like anything I say would be a spoiler. The masterfulness of this documentary is the fact that it builds tension so well, and it keeps the story moving constantly, and just like you're just constantly being baffled, and it's fascinating. It is a great documentary, but I don't know what to say about it, man, without giving stuff away. But it is a highly entertaining time at the movies. Check it out when you get the chance. It's called Three Identical Brothers. Oh, God. I want to watch it again just talking about it. But, yeah, I don't have anything to tell you except for it's amazing. If you want to go get a very twisty movie, like a Shyamalan film, but in constant spurts and in documentary form, then this is the movie for you. Check it out. Lots of fun. Three Identical Strangers. Check it out. Then a couple days later, they finally had a wide release for 8th Grade, which is comedian and internet star Bo Burnham's directorial debut. And as promised by literally every single journalist on the planet that's seen it, it is an incredible film. It was so good. I'm always a sucker for coming-of-age indie movies. It's kind of like my bread and butter, if you will. So I'm always a sucker for that shit. But this movie was exceptional. It works for all ages. I mean, literally everybody over the age of 12 has been to 8th grade. So anybody can relate to this film. And it's just timeless. It's conversations that you've definitely had in your life, situations you've 100% been in, and it's jarring. There's a lot of uncomfortableness, and it's because you're relating to it and watching it. It's cringeworthy to watch it, and then it's cringeworthy to relate to it in such a way. It's backstory. The movie, it's a really basic premise. It's just a girl in 8th grade who's very self-conscious and has social anxiety and doesn't have a lot of friends, and she, much akin to what I'm doing right now, she films herself and talks on the internet and posts it on YouTube, and nobody watches, just like me. Yeah, so she doesn't have anybody to talk to, so she talks to her computer monitor, and that's the premise of the movie. But it's not a plotty film, you know. It's like a week in the life of a teenager, but it's like situations that we've all been in, especially young women have been in, and both the good and scary parts of being a teenage girl. And then you, as a man, you can relate to the people around her, or even her feelings and situations. It's just so it's what a great fucking directorial debut, man. There is a lot of stuff about this film that greatly impressed me. The biggest thing for me is there's a lot of natural lighting in the film, which I greatly appreciate. It was very authentic. Everything about the movie, up and down, was authentic. My favorite aspect of the movie is that they didn't use screen replacements on any of the phones or monitors or anything. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, in movies and television shows for ages now, instead of showing what's actually on a screen with the backlight on, like on a phone or a computer or a TV monitor, it's just blue screen, and then they, in post, will put the screen that you're supposed to see on there. And that shit drives me crazy, especially, you know, with our HD monitors or 4K TVs and shit, or even just regular 1080 HDP TV. You can see it really vividly that those screens are not real. And it drives me crazy. There's never a smudge on a screen. Everything looks super clean, and it's almost like 3D, as if the image is kind of popping off the screen. And that shit always irritates the hell out of me. And this movie did not fuck with that. They found a way to shoot technology without making it fake, keeping it real. You're actually... Every Instagram account in the movie or text message or anything was real. They actually had created these accounts, hundreds of accounts, and were having the actual interactions on the screens, within the screen, working. And it was just fantastic, man. I love seeing stuff like that. We don't need to get overly complicated and try and make everything look perfect. Real life doesn't look like that. This film is authentic. I loved the dad in this movie. He's like... What an inspiration, man. Like, the father in this film is like what any potential dad or current dad should strive to be. He was like, to me, he was like, I was telling somebody earlier this, I was like, the dad in 8th grade to me is like Dennis Leary if Dennis Leary wasn't an asshole. Like, that's how I would describe the dad in that film. I've forgotten the name of the young lady who stars in the film, but she is fantastic. I've seen her in interviews, and she pretty much is that character, so I don't know how much acting was going on there, but it's fascinating nonetheless, and it's not like any film you will have seen in recent times. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, big name directorial debut. Good for you, Bo Burnham. I mean, he's already done extremely innovative things, particularly with his stand-up sets that nobody's done before. And this man is just continually being an innovator. And now, we know he's just an all-around amazing storyteller. So I'm really happy with the turnout of 8th grade. Highly, highly recommend you go out and see it immediately. Let's get some money to this film. Side note, it's rated R, but it's dumb. They drop some F-bombs, but other than that, it should be pretty accessible to anybody without it being inappropriate. And then the following day, I saw the last film that I'll be talking about on this particular podcast. I saw Disney's Christopher Robin, which is, of course, a live-action adaptation, if you will, of Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin. It's essentially Steven Spielberg's Hook, when Peter Pan grew up and he went back to Neverland and stuff. It's essentially that exact movie, but with Winnie the Pooh characters. And it works decently. It wasn't an overly enthralling movie. It was cute. I don't want to say it was a bad movie, because it certainly wasn't. It was well shot. It was, generally speaking, well acted. It's weird to get used to the new voices of the characters, like Brad Garrett as Eeyore. Jim Cummings still voices Pooh and Tigger, so those voices are highly recognizable. He's been doing those fucking voices for like 30 or 40 years at this point. So they sound very authentic, and his name escapes me. I forget who's playing Piglet now, but it's the guy who played Alfred Hitchcock in that HBO movie, and he's in the Captain America film, Zola. It's gonna kill me once I remember his name, but great character actor. Anyway, so it's weird to get used to the voices, but the general speaking part, it's Hook, but with Winnie the Pooh characters. But it's a fun family film. But that's the thing I wanted to get to, is kind of, it's geared towards, you would think it's geared towards children, you know, but it's kind of it's a really depressing movie, and there was kids in the theater that I saw it at, and they were not enjoying it. They were being very restless and did not want to be there. It was not keeping the kids' attention because it's a lot more adult oriented than it is for children. So they're going for that nostalgia factor, but it doesn't work on the youngins because there's not enough of the Winnie the Pooh characters, or it's just because they're being presented in a way that they're not used to, and they're not familiar enough with the franchise to where this returning, if you will, of the characters works. But with that being said, the scenes, specifically the scenes inside the 100-acre wood, were really cool. I thought they did a fantastic job of bringing that world to life. But overall, the movie is exactly what they present it as. It's just as advertised. Don't expect like a tearful Oscar bait type flick. It's just a run-of-the-mill drama type feel-good movie if you want. Like I said, if you've seen Hook, you've seen this movie, but it's just got Winnie the Pooh characters. But it's fine. No, I'm not saying it's a bad movie. Definitely check it out if you're interested. It's worth the watch. You don't need to rush out to go see it. Is all I'm saying, man. It's nothing particularly special. The characters look great. I think the live action iterations of all the characters look fantastic. I think visually speaking, this movie is stellar. The content, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not entirely entertaining, you know. It may be a little bit too dour for the genre that's going into. But, you know, I think it'll probably have legs. I think Disney will end up making some money off of it. But it's like I said, it's worth the watch. I'll stop rambling about it. So I'm going to keep this an abbreviated episode. I'll stop it there. And I just want to thank you guys for listening. And I promise we're going to get some changes here. We're going to get some more fun content. And you're going to hear more than just my voice in the coming episodes once I get my shit together. So thank you once again for checking out the Intellectual Tea Party podcast. More news since the last podcast. We're now available on Spotify. So if you are torturing yourself using Podbean, or if you are just using the YouTube app, or you don't want to use iTunes, or you don't have an iPhone, but you have iTunes, you've been listening to it on the computer, now it's available for you on Spotify. And as always, if you want to watch this podcast instead of listen to it, you can go to youtube.com/Intellectual Tea Party. And you can follow my Facebook page at facebook.com/The Intellectual Tea Party Podcast. Thank you very much, guys. I'll see you later.